Hello friends, in my last lecture I had told you about architecture in ancient India. In this lecture I am going to tell you about the post-ancient period. I will be covering the Indo-Islamic architecture, Mughal architecture, British and last of all the modern day architecture in India. The advent of Islamic rule in India towards the end of the 12th century AD witnessed the amalgamation of the Indian and the Islamic elements, leading to the emergence of a new style of architecture called the indo-Islamic architecture. The Islamic elements of architecture had already passed through different experimental phases in other countries like Egypt, Iran and Iraq before these were introduced in India. What were the new elements which were introduced into the Indian architecture? Firstly, use of shapes instead of natural forms, inscriptional art using decorative lettering or calligraphy, inlay decoration and use of colored marble, painted plaster and brilliantly glazed tiles. Now let's come to the basic features of Indo-Islamic architecture. Indigenous Indian architecture was of the trabeate order, that is, all spaces were spanned by means of horizontal beams. The Islamic architecture was arcuate, that is, an arch or dome was adopted as a method of bridging a space. This concept was borrowed and perfected by Muslims from the architectural styles of the post-Roman period. Let me tell you, for the first time, mortar was used as a cementing agent. Muslims made use of scientific and mechanical formulae derived from other civilizations. This helped, firstly, in obtaining greater strength and stability of the construction materials, and secondly, provided greater flexibility to the architects and builders. Indo-Islamic architecture was greatly facilitated by knowledge and skill of Indian craftsmen in stonework. Islamic architecture in India is both religious and secular. In religious architecture, you can witness mosques and tombs. Palaces and forts are the secular Islamic architectures, and forts were essentially functional, complete with little township within the fortifications. Let me tell you about the Delhi style of architecture. The Delhi or the imperial style of Indo-Islamic architecture flourished between 1191 to 1557 AD. You may say the Sultanate period, comprising of the slave dynasty, the Khiljis, the Tughlaqs, Sayyids and Lodhis. So we'll start with the slave dynasty. Of course, you all know that the first ruler of slave dynasty was Qutubuddin Aibak, and he started erecting monumental buildings of stone on Kila Rai Pithora, the first of the 7 historical cities of Delhi associated with Prithviraj Chauhan. The Qutub Mosque, which he built in 1192 AD, or Quwwat-ul-Islam Masjid. The earliest mosque in India has arcaded aisles composed of pillars carved in the Hindu style. Aibak got a series of arches constructed to screen the Hindu pillars of the sanctuary because he wanted to cover them. Aibak also started the construction of the Qutub Minar to commemorate the entry of Islam into India. It was later completed by his successor Iltutmish. Another interesting monument which he constructed was Adhai Din Ka Jhopda, located beyond the Ajmer Dargah in Rajasthan, and later it was converted into a mosque in 1198 AD. After him came Shamsuddin Iltutmish. He extended the Quwwat-ul-Islam Masjid, built the tomb of his son Nasiruddin Muhammad, started his own tomb located in the Qutub Minar complex. Two other monuments near Delhi called the Hauz-e-Shamsi and Shamsi Idgah were built by him. The tomb of Balban, constructed in 1280 AD, represents the first true arch built in India, which is produced by following the scientific system originally formulated by the Roman engineers. Coming to the Khilji dynasty, nothing much about Jalaluddin, the first ruler. Alauddin Khilji established the second city of Delhi at Siri, built the Alai Darwaza, which served as a gateway to the mosque of the Qutub Minar complex. He dug a vast reservoir at Hauz Khas around 1311 AD, and many other masjids and in Rajasthan were also built by him. The Ghaisuddin Tughlaq of the Tughlaq dynasty built Tughlaqabad, the third city of Delhi, in 1321 to 1323 AD, and the tomb of Ghaisuddin Tughlaq, built of red sandstone, is an irregular pentagon in its exterior plan, and its design is of the pointed or tartar shape and is crowned by a final resembling of the Kalash or the Amla of a Hindu temple. Coming to the last of the Tughlaq rulers, that is Firoz Shah Tughlaq, he himself wrote in Futuhat-e Firoz Shah that among the gifts which God bestowed on me, his humble servant, was a desire to erect public buildings. He built Firozabad, Delhi's fifth city, in 1354 AD. The famous Firoz Shah Kotla crowd, where you see these famous cricket matches, is the only remnant of its past glory. He is credited with founding the fortified cities of Jaunpur, Fatahabad and Hisar. Kali Masjid, Khirki Masjid, Kalan Masjid also belong to this period. The last two being raised on a tehkhana or substructure of arches. His construction works were of a unique simple style characterized by the use of inexpensive materials. He also took up large-scale restoration work, including that of Qutub Minar, which was damaged by lightning in 1369 AD. Coming to the last dynasty of the Sultanate period, the Sayyids and the Lodi dynasties, the Islamic architecture under these Timurid rulers underwent a change. The narrow horseshoe arch was replaced by the true arch, an idea imported directly from Persia. However, Indian masons weren't completely convinced of its holding power, and they began using wooden beams as supports. And eventually, the four-centered arch minus the beam support came into vogue. During the Sayyids and the Lodis, more than 50 tombs of different sizes were constructed. Lodis introduced the concept of double domes built one upon the other, leaving some space in between. Two different types of tombs with octagonal and square plans respectively began to be constructed. Tombs of Mubarak Sayyid, Muhammad Sayyid, Sikandar Lodi are all of octagonal type. The square tombs are represented by such monuments as Bada Khan Ka Gumbad, Chota Khan Ka Gumbad, Bada Gumbad, and so on. Tomb of Isa Khan, tomb of Adham Khan, Mut Ki Masjid, all these belong to the final phase of Delhi style of architecture. After the Delhi Sultanate period, the Mughals came to India, you all know about it, and they were visionaries, and their own personalities reflected in the all-round development of various arts, crafts, music, building and architecture. The Mughal dynasty was established with the victory of Babur over Ibrahim Lodi at Panipat in 1526 AD. Babur took considerable interest in erecting buildings, though few have survived. One is the Mosque Kabuli Bagh at Panipat in Punjab and Jame Masjid at Sambhal near Delhi. After Babur came Humayun. He laid the foundation of a city called Deen Panah, refuge of the faithful, at the Purana Killa in Delhi, but the city could not be completed. As you know, the Mughal Empire briefly fell to the Suris in 1540 but was re-established by Humayun in 1555. The Persian influence into the Mughal architecture was largely a result of Humayun's observance of this style at the court of Shah Tahmasp during the period of his exile. However, the Persian elements could manifest and mature only several years after his death, as is evident in Humayun's tomb, which was designed in 1564 by his widow Haji Begum. Humayun's tomb represents an outstanding landmark in the development and refinement of the Mughal style. And Taj Mahal was modelled on this tomb. Coming to the greatest of the Mughal rulers, Akbar, the chief feature of the architecture of Akbar's time was the use of red sandstone. In principle, the construction was of the Trabeate order, although the Tudor arch was also used. One of the first major building projects was the construction of a huge fort at Agra. You can still see it. It's still standing majestically near the Yamuna. The most ambitious architectural exercise of Akbar was the creation of an entirely new city, capital city, at Fatehpur Sikri, and it has been described as a frozen moment in history. The Buland Darwara, the Panch Mahal and the Dargah of Salim Chishti are the most imposing buildings of Fatehpur Sikri. Diwan-e-Khas, which was designed for private audiences, is a cube-like form with an elaborate central column connected to four corners by bridges. The square plan, although of Central Asian origin, would have represented to the Hindu craftsmen the mandal model of the cosmos. There are several other complexes like Jodhabai's palace and the house of Birbal and so on at Fatehpur Sikri. The next ruler, Jahangir, concentrated more on painting rather than on architecture, and however, there are some noteworthy monuments of his time, like Akbar's tomb at Sikandra near Agra, which was completed in 1613. Sandstone compositions of Akbar were adapted by his successors into opulent marble masterpieces. Jahangir is the central figure in the development of Mughal gardens like the Shalimar Bagh near the Lake Dal in Kashmir. The adjoining Nishat Bagh was built by Asaf Khan. Jahangir's tomb at Shahadra near Lahore, built by his wife Noor Mahal, is another outstanding architectural production of his time. The style of Mughal architecture found expression of exceptional splendor during Emperor Shah Jahan's reign, the son of Jahangir. The single most important architectural change was the substitution of marble for the red sandstone. Shah Jahan demolished the austere sandstone structures of Akbar in the Red Fort and replaced them with marble buildings such as Diwan-e-Aam and Diwan-e-Khas. In 1638, he began to lay the city of Shahjahanabad besides the river Yamuna. The Red Fort at Delhi was built by him. Outside the fort, he built the Jama Masjid, which is the largest mosque in India. Shah Jahan built the Jami Masjid at Agra in 1648 in honor of his daughter Jahara Begum. The Wazir Khan's mosque in Lahore, built in 1634, is another fine example of Mughal art during Shah Jahan's time. However, it is for the Taj Mahal as a memorial to his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal, that he is most often remembered.
Monument for the beloved, the Taj Mahal. Here in Agra, northern India, stands the Taj Mahal with its towers rising toward heaven. Completed in 1654, its beauty was reputed to exceed that of paradise. Islamic style is embodied in the Taj Mahal. Building up stone symmetrically to construct beautiful stone arches is an amazing feat of architecture. The finest builders and artists worked to build the mausoleum to make it the pride of the Mughal Empire. The emperor at the height of the empire was Shah Jahan. To whom did he dedicate this mausoleum? A coffin lies at the stretch of the center line of the mausoleum, a stone coffin of his wife. The empress's coffin was decorated with jasper and jade and is protected by the finely carved open work of marble fencing. The empress is expressed in these works. A grand garden stretches before the mausoleum complex with lush greenery and abundant water. For the Muslim people of the desert, they are symbols of heaven. Star patterns adorn the green lawns. The patterns can also be found on the flagstone walkways. Stars are a symbol of heaven in Islamic culture. By scattering star patterns around the complex, the emperor tried to guide his beloved wife to heaven. Shah Jahan was so despaired at the loss of the empress that his beard turned grey. In the later years of his life, he was put under house arrest by his third son in the castle across the lake. Memories of his wife while gazing at the mausoleum was the only consolation he could find. His body was buried next to his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, by the sixth emperor. The Mughal Empire disintegrated in the 18th century, but the monument dedicated to his beloved wife lives on as World Heritage.
The high point of the Mughal architecture during Shah Jahan's time was the mellow marble, had subtle low relief carving, lace-like jalis, exquisite inlays, pietra dura and calligraphy. The pietra dura work was first incorporated in the Itmad-ud-Daula's tomb at Agra, built by Ghas Beg, father of Nur Jahan. The extensive decoration of the interiors of monuments with precious and semi-precious stones using the pietra dura technique, which developed in Florence in the 16th century, and the use of pictures, jewelry and metalworks indicate considerable European influence on the Mughal art of this period. Jahan Ara was the daughter of Shah Jahan, and she was also a generous patron of architecture. She built the famous Begum Ka Bagh and Begum Sarai at Delhi. She also built her own tomb near the shrine of Dargah of Hazrat Nizamuddin. Coming to Aurangzeb, his architectural projects are represented by the Bibi Ka Maqbara, the tomb of Aurangzeb's wife Begum Rabia Durrani, which is a poor replica of Taj Mahal, and nothing much. The death of Aurangzeb in 1707 led to the decadence of Mughal architecture. His daughters contributed in a small way in carrying forward the Mughal trend of architecture, but nothing much to report. So we come to the end of the period of Mughal rule and the architecture of that period. Coming to the post-Mughal style of architecture, we'll deal with the Awadh style first. During the latter half of the 18th century and the first half of the 19th century, a distinct form of architecture flourished under the Nawabs of Awadh, whose first manifestation was noticed in the form of Safdarjung's tomb, built in the honor of Safdarjung, who was the nephew of the first Nawab of Awadh. The city of Lucknow witnessed large building enterprises under Nawab Asif-ud-Daula. And the most representative architectural achievement of this period is the Bada Imam Bara, built by the Nawab in 1784. Absence of pillars in the main hall and simplicity of style and symmetry are its unique features. On the western side of the Bada Imam Bara is the Rumi Darwaza, in which ornamental designs radiate from the base to the top on both the sides in the most expressive manner. The Chota Imam Bara was built by Muhammad Ali Shah as his tomb. The Shah Najaf Imam Bara, housing the tomb of Nawab Ghazi-ud-Din Haidar, are other noteworthy buildings. Towards the middle of the 19th century, the architectural style of Awadh began to be impregnated with elements from European sources. Major General Claude Martin built a large and pretentious building at Lucknow, then known as Constantia, which was one of the first large buildings of the European style built in North India. Today it houses the Lamatnia Boys School in Lucknow. The Chhatar Manzil, built by Nawab Naziruddin Haidar, is an imposing building whose main attractions are the underground rooms and a beautiful dome surrounded by a gilt umbrella, and hence the name Chhatar Manzil. The Kaisar Bagh, built by Nawab Wazid Ali Shah between 1845 and 1850, is a quadrangular park with a baradari and yellow-colored buildings on three sides. The Roshanwali Kothi, Begum Kothi are other buildings where the Italian style is more prominent. Now we come to architectural style in Punjab. In Punjab, a distinct style of architecture developed under the influence of the Mughal style. It was characterized by certain indigenous features like the multiplicity of chhatris, use of fluted dome generally covered with copper or brass gilt, and enrichment of arches by numerous foliations. This architecture is best manifested in the construction of Golden Temple at Amritsar in 1764, built by the 4th Sikh Guru Ram Das. Now we come to the provincial style of architecture in India, and this encompasses the architectural trends and developments noticed in different provincial capitals in India. First, we'll take up Bengal. The Pandua and Adina mosques are the earliest architectural examples in Bengal. The tomb of Akhi Surajuddin, the Kotwali Darwaza, the Dakhil Darwaza, and the tomb of Sultan Jalaluddin Muhammad Shah served as prototypes for the subsequent Islamic architecture of Bengal. Under the Shirki dynasty, Jaunpur became a great center of art, culture, and architectural activity. During the rule of Shamsuddin Ibrahim, several palaces, mosques, tombs, and other buildings came up, the most important being the Atala Masjid in 1378. Later, other important buildings were produced like Khalis Mukhlis Masjid, Jahangiri Masjid, Lal Darwaza Masjid, and so on. Let's come to Gujarat now. Gujarat witnessed significant architectural activity for over 250 years, starting from Muzaffar Shah's declaration of independence from Delhi and the formation of the Sultanate of Gujarat in 1307 AD until the conquest of Gujarat by the Mughal Emperor Akbar. The early phase of architecture belonging to the 14th century is represented by the tomb of Baba Farid and Adina Masjid at Patan, Jama Masjid of Bharuch, and so on. Under the rule of Ahmad Shahi and Mahmud I, different types of mosques, tombs, and gateways were built at Ahmedabad, Dholka, and Sarkhej. Let's take up Malwa now. The cities of Dhar and Mandu of the Malwa province provide examples of distinct architectural elements in the form of polychromatic ornamentation of buildings, which was obtained by the use of colored stones and marble, as well as by means of encaustic tiles. Earliest buildings of this period are Kamal Maula Masjid, Lat Masjid at Dhar, Dilwar Khan Masjid, Malik Mughi's Mosque at Mandu, and so on. The architectural activity took a new turn with the establishment of the capital at Mandu, especially under the rule of Hoshang Shah. Important buildings in Mandu are the Jahaz Mahal, Taveli Mahal, Dilwar Khan's Mosque, Hoshang Shah's tomb, etc. Mandu, or the city of joy, was associated with the romance of the poet Prince Baz Bahadur and Rani Roopmati. And the city has also many gateways like Delhi Darwaza, Rampol Darwaza, etc. Coming to the south, the architecture of Deccan is marked by its distinct originality and independence of style. It derives its elements from the architectural styles of the Sultan of Delhi and that of distant Persia. The earliest period of architectural development started in 1347 when Alauddin Bahman Shah constructed the Gulbarga fort and the Jami Masjid at Gulbarga. The second phase is represented by the architecture of Bidar, initiated by Ahmad Shah, which includes the Bidar fort, Mahmud Gawan's Madarsa, and Ali Barid's tomb. The tombs of 15th century built by Bahmani rulers of Bidar depict distinct Persian elements dexterously combined with those of Delhi style. Finally, the tombs of Qutub Shahi dynasties of the 16th and the 17th centuries show a fully developed bulbous or a Tartar dome. The Qutub Shahi and Nizam Shahi dynasties contributed greatly towards the development of the Deccan style of architecture. And the best architectural specimen is the Char Minar, built in 1591 by Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah. The Mecca Masjid, located near Charminar, is another architectural beauty, started by Abdullah Qutub Shah, completed in 1687 by Aurangzeb. The Golconda Fort, built by Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah in 1525, was an impregnable fort of great strategic importance. The Qutub Shahi tombs are a cluster of 6 magnificent tombs situated a kilometer north of Golconda's fort. The Falaknuma Palace, built in 1870 by Nawab Vikar ul Mara, the Prime Minister of Hyderabad, is a rare blend of Italian and Tudor architecture. The Adil Shahi dynasty of Bijapur constructed several mosques, tombs and palaces. The development of the dome reached its acme during their reign. They also borrowed some elements like the use of symbol of crescent from the Ottoman Empire. And the most important monument of this period is Gol Gumbaz, built by Muhammad Adil Shah. Bijapur is also famous for the Sat Manzil, Ibrahim Roza and Gagan Mahal. Now let's go to the northmost part of India, that is the Kashmir. The Islamic architecture of Kashmir is typified by use of woodwork. The log construction using deodar trees for the construction of wooden bridges or wooden shrines are best illustrations of wooden architecture of Kashmir. The mosque of Shah Hamdan in Srinagar and the Jami Masjid at Srinagar, built by Sikandar Butchi Khan, are the typical examples. The Mughals tried to revive the art of stone building in Kashmir in the 16th and 17th centuries, and the results were the fort of Hari Parbat, the Patthar Masjid, and so on. Bihar, in the eastern part of India, is witnessed architectural activity, and Sher Shah Suri of the Sur dynasty made noteworthy contribution to Indo-Islamic architecture there. The town of Sasaram is an excellent illustration of this, and the tomb of Sher Shah Suri here is an architectural masterpiece. Sher Shah's another great contribution was the completion of the 6th city of Delhi, called the Shergarh or Delhi Sher Shah, around the Purana Killa area in the 1540s. The Purana Killa has 3 main gates: the Humayun Darwaza, Talaki Darwaza and Bada Darwaza. After this, we will come to the colonial type of architecture. The advent of Europeans, whether they were Portuguese, Danes, French, British, brought this wave of colonial architecture in India. European colonists brought with them to India concepts of their worldview and a whole baggage of the history of European architecture: neoclassical, Romanesque, Gothic and Renaissance. The initial structures were utilitarian warehouses and walled trading posts, giving way to fortified towns along the coastline. Let's take up the Portuguese first. The Portuguese adapted to India climatically with appropriate Iberian galleried patio house and the Baroque churches of Goa, Say Cathedral and Arch of Conception of Goa, St. Francis Church at Cochin, Fort of Castella di Aguada near Mumbai, and added fortifications and structures to the Bassein Fort, which was built by Bahadur Shah, the Sultan of Gujarat, are examples of Portuguese architecture. Coming to the Danes, the Danish influence is evident in Nagapattinam, which was laid out in squares and canals, and also at Serampore. The French gave a distinct urban design to its settlement in Pondicherry by applying the Cartesian grid plans and classical architectural patterns. However, it was the British who left a lasting impact on Indian architecture. They saw themselves as the successors of the Mughals and used architecture as a symbol of power. The British followed various architectural styles: Gothic, Imperial, Christian, English Renaissance and Victorian. The first buildings which they built were factories, but later courts, schools, municipal halls and dak bungalows came up, which were ordinary structures built by garrison engineers. A deeper concern with architecture was exhibited in churches and other public buildings. Most of the buildings were adaptations of the buildings designed by leading British architects of that time like Wren, Adam, Nash and others in London and other places. For instance, the Church of St. John at Calcutta was built in 1787, inspired by St. Stephen's Church at Walbrookes. The Government House in Calcutta was built by Captain Charles Wyatt, modelled on the Kedleston Hall of Derbyshire. The Indian Government Mint in Calcutta is a half-scale replica of the Temple of Minerva at Athens. And other buildings also took shape in exact replicas of European buildings. Unlike Europe, however, these buildings were built mostly of brick and stuccoed with lime. Neo-Gothic architecture flourished in different parts of India under the British, inspired by the Houses of Parliament in London. Colonel Thomas Cowper built the Town Hall in Bombay during 1820 to 1835. Governor Sir Barclay Frere tried to give a truly imperial ambience to the city of Bombay. During his reign, the old town walls were broken down and the Gateway of India was built in the Gothic style of architecture. The Secretariat, University Library, Rajbai Tower, Telegraph Office and the Victoria Terminus all followed the Victorian Gothic style, similar to buildings in London. In Varanasi, one of the true Gothic monuments is the Queen's College. In Allahabad, the British built a series of edifices including the University, All Saints Cathedral, the High Court and the Mayo College in Gothic style. In Calcutta, a High Court was constructed following the Gothic style. The Howrah Bridge, with its red brick facade surrounded by 8 square towers, represents a combination of the Oriental and the Roman styles. Fort William, the stronghold of the British in the mid-19th century, that took 13 years to construct at a cost of more than 3.5 million, and the Victoria Memorial in Calcutta, designed by Sir William Emerson, are probably the most imposing of all British structures in India. The passing of power from East India Company to the British Crown after the 1857 revolt, the rise of Indian nationalism and the introduction of railways were the watersheds in the British colonial Indian architectural history. New materials like concrete, glass, wrought and cast iron opened up new architectural possibilities. The British also started assimilating and adopting the native Indian styles in the architecture. All these factors led to the development of Indo-Saracenic architecture towards the end of the 19th century. Victorian in essence, it borrowed heavily from the Islamic style of Mughal and Afghan rulers. The Indo-Saracenic style was Indian on the outside and British inside. F.S. Grouse, Sir Swinton Jacob, R. F. Chisholm and H. Irwin were the pioneers of this style of architecture. The Cheapok Palace in Chennai, designed by Paul Benfield, Law Courts, Victoria Memorial Hall, Presidency College and Senate House of Chennai, Muir College at Allahabad, Napier Museum at Thiruvananthapuram, the Post Office, Prince of Wales Museum and the Gateway of India in Mumbai, the Maharaja's Palace at Mysore and MS University and Lakshmi Vilas Palace at Baroda are examples of Indo-Saracenic style of architecture. The architecture of New Delhi was the crowning glory of the British Raj. Robert Byron described New Delhi as the Rome of Hindustan. The British built New Delhi as a systematic planned city after it was made the capital in 1911. The British Viceroy made Sir Edward Lutyens responsible for the overall plan of Delhi. He was specially directed to harmonize externally with the traditions of Indian art. Thus, the Western architecture with Oriental motif was realized with chhajjas, jalis and chhatris as stylistic devices in the Viceroy's house, now the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Herbert Baker added the imposing buildings of the South Block and the North Block which flank the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Another Englishman called Robert Todd Tussell built the Connaught Place and the Eastern and Western Courts. Sir Martin's Garrison Church marks the culmination of the British architectural ventures in India. The church is a huge monolith with a high square tower and deeply sunken window ledges reminiscent of Dutch and German architecture. So that brings us to the end of the colonial type of architecture in India. After the British left India in 1947, Indian architecture dropped into an abyss. Indian architects who were relegated to the role of being assistants to the British architects under the British Raj took their own time to express their ingenuity. Perhaps there was an identity crisis, a dilemma whether to bask in the glory of the past or move forward with times using new ideas, images and techniques. The post-independence period saw the emergence of two schools of thought in architecture in modern India: the revivalist, who advocated continuity with the past, and the modernist, who also depended heavily on the European and American models and tried to adopt them in India. The contemporary Indian architecture was beset with many problems like population explosion, lack of vision among the planners, lack of support from the government, and a less than satisfactory standard of architecture education. The result was that during the initial years after the independence, foreign architects continued to play a leading role in Indian architecture. Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, had called for an open architectural competition for the design of the Ashoka Hotel in 1956, which was won by B.E. Doctor, an architect from Bombay. Using technology to create large pillarless spaces, Doctor created a facade that borrowed from Islamic, Hindu, British and modern architecture. Indian architecture witnessed a revolution when the Punjab government engaged Le Corbusier to design the new city of Chandigarh. Built in 3 stages, the city is divided into 3 sections. The head consisted of political, bureaucratic and judicial buildings, that is the administrative parts of the city. The body housed the university and residential complexes in the heart of the city, and the feet consisted of industrial sectors and the railway station. Apart from the initial layout of the city, Corbusier also designed several buildings in Chandigarh, the High Court building and the Assembly. Taking inspiration from Le Corbusier's creativity, a young Indian architect, D.V. Joshi, designed the Institute of Indology in Ahmedabad. Charles Mark Correa, Joshi's contemporary, designed the Hindustan Lever Pavilion for India in the Indian International Trade Fair in 1961. Correa also designed the Gandhi Sangrahalaya in Ahmedabad as a tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. The Asiad Village in New Delhi, designed by Raj Reval, is one of architectural landmarks of modern India. The lotus-shaped Baha'i temple in New Delhi, designed by Fariburz Sabha in 1980 and completed in December 1986, is an awe-inspiring example of the ingenuity of the Indian architects. However, the fact remains that the contemporary architecture in India has failed to inspire. Even after 50 years of independence, our cities are still symbolized by pre-independence buildings like the Gateway of India or the Victoria Terminus or the Victoria Memorial and so on. In contrast, most major cities in the world have their own splendid modern buildings to boast of. In November 1998, the media reported that the foundation stone of a World Center of Vedic Learning, the world's tallest building, would be laid at Karondi village in Jabalpur in Madhya Pradesh. Now this building will be built by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Vedic University, and it is being designed according to the Maharishi Sthapatya Ved, symbolizing the victory of India's ancient knowledge of Vastu Vidya. Indeed, India will have something to cheer about if this building materializes. Madhya Pradesh seems to be the only state in India which has several grand public buildings and international award-winning projects. The new Assembly building in Bhopal and the Madhya Pradesh State Electricity Board office in Jabalpur, the Judicial Academy in Bhopal, the Rajiv Gandhi Jal Grahan Mission in Raipur, and the proposed White House in Bhopal are some fascinating examples which show that global aesthetics is moving very fast into the smaller Indian cities. Paradoxically, it is the smaller cities and towns like Indore, Raipur, Rajkot, Baroda and Bhopal, with no great visible architectural traditions like that of Lucknow, Agra and so on, that are displaying unprecedented alacrity in adapting to international styles. There is a growing brand of young and dynamic architects, which includes Charles Correa, Prashant Divakriti, Ajay Kataria, Anjum Gupta, Vineet Chadha, Nikhil Sompura and others who do not shy away from experimentation. Most often, these architects employ a hybrid style that is a free mix of Roman, English, Gothic, Rajasthani and Mughal styles. This new age architectural aesthetics has redefined the idea of space. The emphasis now seems to be on having more open spaces, green spaces and natural lighting. It is, however, not possible to term this new trend as a representative architecture of our times, as it is highly restricted in geographic terms and also confined to the affluent lot only.